our family trip to Universal Orlando, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Hello again, I'm Mike Blackston, and this is Road Noise. And in this episode, I'm going to tell you all about my road trip with my family to Universal Studios Orlando, and especially the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. This is something that we've had in the works for quite a while. My son was turning 11 in August, this past August, and he has been begging us for a couple of years now to take us, or to take him to Universal Studios Florida. We live in Georgia, so it's not too awful far from us. It's a good trip, it's a good drive, but it's, not as far as a lot of people who want to travel to the Orlando area. And so he didn't see why we couldn't just go down there one weekend, and we explained to him it, had a lot more to do about money than it had to do with the time taking him down there. But he just really has been begging us. And so earlier on in the year, me and Kayla decided we were going to surprise him for his birthday. He was turning 11, and if you're a fan of the Harry Potter series, you'll know that 11 is the year that someone who is going to be invited to Hogwarts in the books receives their letter of invitation to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. So we said, hey, we'll throw him a Harry Potter-themed birthday party, which wasn't a surprise. He knew we were doing that. But what he didn't know was in the decorations where we had mimicked one of the scenes from one of the movies and the books, where in the movie and in the books, the people that Harry is staying with, they know all about Hogwarts, and they don't want Harry to go. For one thing, they're cruel to him, but they have other reasons as well that I won't go into. But there's a scene where Harry has been denied his letter to Hogwarts over and over again, and finally they just come one Sunday afternoon, I think it is, they just come gushing hundreds and hundreds of letters out of the fireplace and through the door and everything all at one time to make sure that Harry is able to get his letter. Well, we decided to mimic them coming out of the fireplace at his birthday party. We threw it at the local theater where we do a lot of shows. My family is very involved with the theater in Elberton, Georgia, and so we borrowed one of the prop fireplaces that we use, and we did the birthday party in the art center next door. It's one of the sections, a brand new section that's been built onto the theater, and we tied a bunch of false letters to wire, attached them to, not wire, but a fishing line, so that it looked like letters were flying, and attached it from the fireplace to the ceiling so that it looked like letters were flying out of the fireplace. But what we didn't tell Noah was that one of them would be a special letter that was, most of them just looked like envelopes and didn't have anything in them, but one of them was an actual envelope. And Kayla even went to the trouble of having a friend of hers who has started a calligraphy business, and had her to write his letter to Hogwarts in calligraphy on papyrus, just like it would have been in the book and in the movie. So it was really neat, and he had to go find the one that was out of place, and he opened it in front of everybody, and inside not only was the letter, but was the information and the surprise that he was going to get to go to Universal Studios, and especially the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which is what he'd been begging for so long. So that led us all the way up to this past weekend. We had ourselves a blast, and I'm going to tell you all about it from start to finish, because it was only 2 days in the parks. Then the third day we drove home. It was not a very long trip. It wasn't a week-long vacation. We couldn't afford to do that really right now with where we stand, so we just made it a half week. But we had a ball. But there was some things that we had to do that made it kind of difficult on us, especially on the first day. And one of them was the drive. From our house, it takes about 8 hours to get there. That's a round number. The GPS wanted to say 7 to 7.5, and we knew we were going to stop for breakfast and stop for going to the bathroom and stuff like that because we were driving. So we knew it was going to take us a little longer than that. We were to be there Wednesday and Thursday in the parks. That meant getting there Wednesday morning as soon as they open at the park. You know, we wanted to be checked into the hotel and in the park just almost as soon as they open. Spend the day in the park, go home, and then the same thing the next day and spend all day in the park so that we didn't miss any more than we had to miss and just get 2 good full days in there. It turned out I had a customer to call me. The plan was for me to take the whole week off. I run my own company, so I'm able to do that if I want to just not schedule myself during time and take a vacation. I have I can do that. I run my own company. I'm my own boss. I make my own hours, and that's one of the wonderful things about being an entrepreneur and being able to do that is that I'd have to ask nobody permission for anything. The other thing, though, is that I don't work on a salary. I work on kind of a commission basis. I don't get paid if I don't have contracts during the week. And I had planned to not work during the week, but I did have a phone call, and someone said, can you come up here and do something? And I told them I had Monday and Tuesday open, but it was going to be, I was going to have to get it crammed in there and made sure that the job got done no later than early Tuesday afternoon. The problem was this customer was 6 hours from where I live, and they were north of where we were going. So it wasn't like, it might have been different if I could have gone ahead and taken my family with me if we were going south towards Orlando, but I wasn't. I was going north from where I live. So Monday morning I got up and I drove 6 hours to Clinton, North Carolina, worked all day, spent the night, and then got up and worked most of the day again till about 3 o'clock in Clinton, North Carolina, which that meant that I was going to come home 6 hours later, which I did. I got home about 10 o'clock at night, and the plan was for us to leave around midnight Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and drive all night to Orlando and get there when the park opened, and then stay all day. I had not planned on driving 6 hours immediately before that, but that's the way it worked out. So here I go on Tuesday, leaving Clinton, North Carolina. I drove, got home at 10 o'clock at night after driving 6 hours, packed the car, and then turned around and drove another 8 hours all the way to Orlando. Now, the good thing is I did not have to drive. My wife said when I got there, she said, you've driven the whole way. I'm going to drive. You sleep. Unfortunately, I couldn't, but also fortunately, because that way she was not forced to have to drive all night by herself, which is not something she's used to doing, and I was able to help her out and keep her company. And once my son finally did go to sleep, then we had, some quiet time to have our discussions and just spend some quality time with each other uninterrupted, because you're not going to get phone calls and stuff like that overnight. So that turned out okay. Noah did not want to go to sleep, though. I knew that was going to happen because, I've been a kid. I understand the excitement of doing something. He was excited for a couple of reasons. First, he was going to Orlando for Universal Studios, but he was also getting to stay up, or at least that's kind of what he had in mind, was that he wanted to stay up all night with us on the drive up there. I quickly shut that down. I let him stay up for a couple of hours as we drove. We ended up leaving earlier than midnight. Once we were packed and ready to go, we didn't want to sit there twiddling our fingers. We said we might as well go ahead and go and give ourselves plenty of time. And if we have stops to make, we can take our time a little bit better. So we left about an hour and a half earlier. I think we left around 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock by the time we got really on the road good. So he stayed up for a couple of hours, and then he decided he was getting sleepy, and I told him to, cuddle up in the back there. We made plenty of room for him and go on to sleep, which he did. And he slept about 4 hours, I think, is the most he slept during that trip, and he woke up halfway up there. But, we had a couple of hours left to go by the time he woke up, and that was okay. We packed snacks and drinks for the trip in coolers. We decided we weren't going to spend a whole lot of money on the trip because we knew we were going to spend money in the park. One of the things that I had wanted to make sure of right when we decided we were going to do this trip was that I wanted to make sure that when we went, I wasn't counting pennies every time we spent money. I didn't want to be that dad that's going, well, we can't afford that, we can't afford that, and nobody has fun. I didn't want to spend stupidly, but at the same time, I did not want to ruin everybody's trip by being the guy that was counting pennies. I think you probably have been there. Maybe you're that person or have been around that person. It's not fun for anybody. You go on vacation, you don't want to have to think about that. So we put some money aside and had enough money to spend while we were there. But we did know we were going to spend a lot of money while we were there because things are just expensive in and around Orlando, in the gift shops and things like that. Especially in the parks, you're just going to spend more money than you normally would in a normal going out or buying something situation. So we did that and packed drinks and snacks. I didn't pack as many snacks as I thought I would. I wanted to get several different kinds of snacks so we wouldn't get bored, but it just turned out that we really weren't that hungry overnight, and it's a good thing. One thing I did do is I bought that big bucket O cheese balls. If you go to Walmart or somewhere like that and you see the big, you remember the Planters cheese balls that used to come in the little smaller round cylindrical container, and you just couldn't stop. You'd eat one and you couldn't stop, and they make your fingers all orange. Well, now you can get them in a huge bucket that no human being has any right to be eating out of, because that many cheese balls I think would kill you if you tried to eat them all at one time. Well, I decided that between me and my son and my wife, big bucket O cheese balls would be the way to go. That way nobody had to worry about, you're eating too many of them, just eat as many as you want. And my wife, who is on I don't know if you'd call it the Atkins diet. There are a couple of different little things about the diet she's on, but it's worked for her very well, but it is very, very, very close to the Atkins diet, which means no carbs or very few carbs, I should say. Well, that's all those cheese balls are, just carbs. It's puffed, fried, I really don't know what you call it, corn poppy thing, whatever they're made of, they're all carb. She had decided on this trip she was not going to worry about her diet, that she would do as best as she could, that when she felt inspired to eat right, she would, but if she saw something she really wanted to have that was off of the diet during the vacation time, she was going to do that and not worry about it. And I said I thought that was a great idea, because I think when you're doing a diet plan like that, sometimes you need to allow yourself, I think, something to look forward to, a small, controlled area of time where you're able to allow yourself without guilt to do these things. And so that's what she was going to do for those 3 days. Well, we ate on that bucket of cheese balls for the whole trip, and it's still only halfway gone. It's sitting on my counter now, so I wish I hadn't bought the thing, because I'm trying to lose a few pounds too. I've got about 30 pounds, I think, left to go before I need to be at my ideal weight, and those cheese balls do not help as they cry to me every time I pass them on the kitchen counter. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's not anything about the wizarding world of Harry Potter. So we got going. Noah had his Mountain Dews. We had our waters in the cooler, and we were good. And we spent our time on the road. We stopped several times because Kayla has a very small bladder, and she has to go to the bathroom. So about every hour on the hour, we were finding a place to go to the bathroom. But we finally got there. We checked into the hotel. I called ahead to make sure that they would have early check-in, and they did. So we got there, and unfortunately, we had missed the closest shuttle to us time-wise. They were on a schedule, and we had missed the 8:55 shuttle, and it wasn't coming again until 10 o'clock, and it was 9 when we got there, so we didn't want to wait around at the hotel for an hour. So it cost me $20 to park, but that's okay. So we decided to pile back into the car, and we drove to Universal Studios and paid $20 to park. This time of the year, the park is about, I would say by the parking lot, it looked about half of what you would normally expect if you went in June, July, or August during the hot, kids are out of school, summertime season. It was really easy to park. We got in there, paid our toll, and parked and walked right into the park. There were a few lines to get into the park. We had to go to the kiosk. We had prepaid for our package for our tickets, so there's kiosks that you go to that print out these little cardboard tickets that you have to keep with you at all times. But we did that, and we waited in the line to get into the park, but once you were there, you're in, and you're good to go. I had misunderstood. I thought that we were just going to kind of do things as we went, and we would get to the Harry Potter area when we did. I was mistaken. When you walk in, there's a place called City Walk, which is just a bunch of stores. You got a Starbucks, and you got restaurants, and you got sunglasses, kiosks, everything that they can think of to try to make you spend money before you actually get into the attractions part. But it's called City Walk, and you go through that, and you have a choice to make. You've got two separate areas of Universal Studios. You've got Island of Adventure to your left, and then you've got whatever the other place was called. I'm not sure what the other place was called off the top of my head. We chose to go to the right, to the place that I can't remember what it was called. So we went in and we got our tickets to the park. You had to actually enter the parks from two separate gates. From if you're going to Islands of Adventure, you have to show your park pass. If you go into the other place, you have to show your park pass. So we waited in line. We got there. The very first thing we saw as we walked in was the Shrek adventure on the right. And I said, oh, look. And it didn't look like there was much of a line. So I said, oh, look, there's the Shrek adventure. I like Shrek. I figured, we're going to try to do everything in the park. Here it is. Let's go do Shrek. And they were like, well, and I said, well, let's do Shrek. Let's do Shrek. Let's do Shrek. So I said, okay. Well, two things. My wife got a little perturbed with me because she thought I understood that the reason we were there, yes, we were going to do everything at Universal Studios, but the reason we were there was the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, you got to understand, my wife is as much or more of a Harry Potter fan than my son is. She started reading the books from book one, which, if you've read the series, book one is geared more toward a teenage, early teen level. It's written that way, but it's still a very good book, and it'll catch you and take you in and make you want to read more. And then as you read through the series, as the children and the kids in the story grow up, the writing style and everything else grows with them until you get to the end of it, and it's a very adult. I'm not saying adult as in inappropriate for children, but I wouldn't want necessarily my 12-year-old reading the end of the book probably as much as I would want them to start at the beginning or the end of the book at the end of the series, because it's just got more adult themes. It's more intense. It's written more in a more complicated prose. And Kayla started at book one and went all the way through and just fell in love with the Harry Potter series. I read it too. I've read the entire series as well. I've read it once. There aren't many books that I can read over and over and over again. So I've read it once. I enjoyed it, but she really, really enjoyed it and fell in love with the story. So she's more of a fan than Noah is. And she was a little irritated that I made them ride the Shrek ride right up front. Noah, I was not aware, hates theater rides where you put on 3D glasses, sit in a seat that moves and jostles you around a little bit, and you've got a big screen in front of you doing 3D. He hates it. I think it's because when he was 2.5, almost 3 years old, I think he was only a couple of months from turning 3 when we went to Disney World, and took him for the first time. And the very first thing we took him on was A Bug's Life at the Animal Kingdom, and it scared the mess out of him, and we had a hard time getting him to do anything after that. And that was one of those things. I don't even think the seats moved in that one. That just was a 3D thing, and it scared him so much. I think that might be what made him hate them. But he hates those types of things, and that's exactly what Shrek was. I wasn't too crazy about Shrek myself, though. As far as critiquing an attraction at Universal Studios, it was kind of boring. The guy takes you go in the line, and you go into this lobby area that's kind of like the castle, and you've got a guide. He's kind of narrates this thing, and they go through this whole production while the other people are in the theater going on, doing the main attraction. You're going through this little production of this guy. He talked like this, and I really just didn't like what he was doing. It wasn't his fault. He was doing the best he could, and it just was a little bit too contrived even for the Shrek ride. And then the whole thing was pretty much all about recapping the entire story of the first movie of Shrek, which we've all seen. And I guess they do that so that anyone who has not, a grandparent comes in and hasn't seen Shrek, won't be all that confused when you go through the ride part of it. They'll kind of know what's going on. I think that's why they do that, but it just kind of got boring and long. And we fussed with Noah the whole time because he's 11 years old, and he whined and whined. He did not want to do it, and here I am being dad, pointing my finger at him, saying, you're not going to be this way this entire weekend. You're going to do this stuff. We brought this package for you. We're here for you, and we are not going to just walk around and look at stuff. You're going to be a part of this, and you're not going to be whining and complaining the whole time. Because right now, I'm going to be honest, Noah's in a time, I love him, but he's 11 and a half years old, and he's gotten into that kind of angsty thing. Teenagers are teenagers earlier now, I think, because he's not quite a teen, but he really is into that teen angst. Seems that way, at least. And he was just complaining, and we were already fussing at him, standing in line the whole time. We went through the thing. He took his glasses off. He did not want to watch the 3D. He doesn't like 3D. None of us really like to watch movies in 3D. So here we were, already arguing. Went through the Shrek ride. Didn't care too much for it. Okay. We get out of there, and Kayla and I we didn't really get into an argument, but she let me know she was perturbed. She said, I thought you understood that when we got here, first place we were going was Harry Potter. The problem with me is I'm the kind of person that likes to do things very efficiently, and Kayla normally is. And the Harry Potter thing is up in the corners of the two parks. It's up in the upper corners of the two parks, so you've got to go through everything to get to it. And my thought is, we'll work our way up to it. We'll do everything in Harry Potter in this side at the end of this park, and then we'll go across via Hogwarts Express. Then we'll do everything in that park, and then work our way back across. That's just kind of my thought. Because what happens is you can travel between the two parks via the Hogwarts Express steam engine, which is kind of neat. It wasn't as neat as I thought it was going to be, but it was still kind of neat. You're going to hear my GPS here in just a minute. So if she interrupts me, I'm not going to take the time to try to edit her out every time she tells me to make a turn. I'll just let it stay in the podcast, because this is a This is a podcast about me driving, so I guess the GPS will be just part of our ambiance. And she's really... Okay, car. I can't stand it when people... I have a hard time with road rage. Here's something you need to understand. Here's a little driving education for you. If you're two cars coming to the on-ramp at the same time to get on the interstate, going the same way, the car who has the right turn has the right of way. I can't stand it when people who have the right of way decide to be nice and let everybody else go before them, because that just confuses people and holds everything up. If you have the right of way, take your right of way and go. Everybody will appreciate it. ran over. You probably won't hear my GPS now for a while because I've got 23 miles until my next turn. Where was I? Okay, so we have decided, I understand now, Kayla says, no, we're not going to go the efficient way. We told him Harry Potter was why we were here. Yes, we're going to do everything, but we're going to hit Harry Potter first. We're going to do that. That's going to be our main focus. And then once we've done the Harry Potter stuff and we're tired of it, we'll go hit everything else. But until then, that's what we're here for, and that's where we're going. So, okay, fine. So we started walking. Now, let me take an aside here to tell you that I still have an ingrown toenail that I was walking on. So I'm trying my best to stay in a good mood, knowing that I'm going to be walking all day long with an ingrown toenail that is bothering me because I don't have health insurance right now. And I haven't had it done. I'm having to save up the money for the surgery, and it's going to happen in a couple of weeks. But, yeah, I have the ingrown toenail. I didn't want to walk inefficiently. I wanted to be able to go to my next thing, then maybe stand, then maybe sit, give it a rest. But I did. I did exactly what they wanted to do because this was, to me, it was for them. So we went straight from that point to the Harry Potter portion of the park of Universal that we were in. It was the Diagon Alley and London area. They have it broken up into London and then Diagon Alley in this park. And then in the Island of Adventure, it is Hogwarts and Hogsmeade. And you get to them, you can go all the way around from park to park the normal way, but you can also jump on the Hogwarts Express out of Diagon Alley and go across to the Island of Adventure to the Hogwarts and Hogsmeade area via the Hogwarts Express, and it's kind of cool because you ride the steam engine. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But we had us an issue when we got to Diagon Alley. Now, the first thing Noah wanted to do, he wanted a wand. And we had promised him that we would get him one souvenir that was going to be expensive. We knew there would be a lot of expensive stuff, but we told him we weren't going to spend money on a whole bunch of souvenirs that are extremely expensive. So he chose a wand. He knew going in that he wanted to get a wand. Okay. Well, the first place we came to in Diagon Alley was the wand place. I can't remember what the name of it's called in the books. They had wands at several different little places within all of the Harry Potter stuff, but this was the wand place in the books that you go, and the old wizard says, the wizard doesn't choose the wand chooses the wizard. So we went in there, and it was packed to the gills. This time of the year is not, as I said earlier, as busy, but there were still a lot of people there. It was still elbow to elbow. And I'm going to tell you, I am never, let me repeat that, because this includes if anybody ever tells me here's a free ticket and free airfare and free everything down there in the summer. I don't care. Thank you, but no thank you. I am never going there during the heavy season in the summer. It ain't happening because there were not nearly as many people, I don't think, as normal, like I said, by the parking situation, as there normally are during the on-season, but it was still, like I said, elbow to elbow. And when you went into those little tiny shops, everything was tiny and compact within the little town areas that they had built up here, like the movies. So they were just, you were packed in there like sardines, and you couldn't hardly move, and you constantly, oh, I'm sorry, let me get by you, excuse me, oh, I'm sorry. But he wanted to go in, and he got his wand, and he chose the wand that was the replica of Sirius Black's wand. That's the one he decided he wanted, and he looked at all the different boxes, and it was neat, because like in the movie, they just had it floor to ceiling, just those little boxes of wands. The only difference is they had the thing on the front of it that said Sirius Black, Voldemort, Harry Potter, Hermione, all the different names of the wizards and stuff that you know from the movie. You can buy their wand. And they had the names on the front of the boxes. Other than that, it was really neat. I have to admit, it was a very neat atmosphere. Of course, similar to Disney, everybody who worked there tried to stay in character. I won't say that they did as good a job as Disney does, because they didn't. They didn't seem to be into it as much as Disney does, and I won't go into all of that critique in this episode. Maybe I'll talk about the differences, because we're planning to go to Disney World in a year to a year and a half, so maybe after that time I'll do a comparison. But they did an okay job as far as staying into character for the most part. But we got out of there and we did all the little stuff. We went into Honeyduke's candy shop and looked at some stuff. And so once we bought the wand, which was $45 for this wand, okay, that's fine. That's your big souvenir. That's your expensive souvenir. Then he goes somewhere else and he finds a chocolate frog, like the ones from the movie, that has a collectible wizard card in it, and he wanted that. Well, this chocolate frog was $10. Now, admittedly, it was fairly heavy and solid all the way through. It wasn't a hollow chocolate frog. It was solid all the way through, but it still was $10 for probably a 3-inch by 4-inch chocolate frog. He got that, and that was immediate. And I didn't tell you that on the way in the City Walk, before we even hit one of the parks, he was wanting to get a Doctor Who. He found a Doctor Who kiosk and was wanting to get something for $20 there. And I was like, no, look, we have barely even gotten in the park. We're not going to spend every dime we've got on souvenirs that cost way more than they need to. You got one expensive one, and you better keep that in mind and kind of look at what you want and look at all of your options before you make a decision, because you're going to buy something, then you're going to have already spent it and not have the ability to buy something you want even more later on. So I did get him the chocolate frog, though, and we walked out, and the next ride that we came upon was the Escape from Gringotts. Gringotts Bank there is very neat. It has a dragon over the top of it that every now and then will move and shoot fire out of its mouth, and it's like it's crawling on the spires of the bank there on the roof, and it's really neat. It catches your eye, and there was a little bit of a line outside, but not too much of one, for the ride Escape to Gringotts. And when you look out, or you look at the wall out front, it gives you the warning, this is a roller coaster ride that does dip and dive and fairly high speeds, and it is a 3D adventure type thing. And Kayla wanted to do it. And soon as Noah saw that she wanted to do it, and obviously I was going to go with her, that meant Noah had to go, he started complaining again. He did not want to do it, to the point that he was nearly crying. I don't want to do it. I hate those things. And we had to stop and have a family meeting, because I was serious. I was not going to walk around, spend a bunch of money on things that were too expensive, and walk around, point and look, take pictures, and go home. That was not why we were there, and I had no idea that he had a little bit of a fright about some of this stuff. So we had our talk, and I explained to him that because this was not something that was suggested that if, you're young, you shouldn't do. He was well over the height requirement for it. There were kids way smaller than him going in. And I said, Noah, me and your mom came to ride these things as well as do everything else that's here. We want to experience the entire thing. I said, if you don't do this ride so that she has to go by herself and I have to wait out here with you, and then I have to wait in line and go in by myself while she waits with you, and we spend half our days doing it that way, it's going to be miserable, and you need to understand I'm never bringing you to anything like this again. Don't expect to go to the fair. Don't expect to go to Six Flags. Don't expect anything like that, because I'm not wasting my money if this is what we're going to have to deal with. He said, all right, fine, I'll ride it. Well, the whole way through, he was just whimpering and whining, and I don't want to do it, I'm nervous about it. Wouldn't put on, once we got on the ride, he wouldn't even put on his 3D glasses again. He made me hold them. And I'm thinking, okay, this boy's got some sort of a serious phobia about this. I'm going to see how he reacts to it before I make him do anything else. And I did tell him, I said, son, I promise you, you're going to like this. Well, we went through the ride. It was really a fun ride. It was my favorite ride of the entire Universal Studios experience. He got off it, loving it, couldn't wait, said he wanted to do it again later. And I told him, I said, I told you, son, you need to trust me. So we walk around, and it's time, we've done everything at Diagon Alley. They had these really neat singers there. They had this lady who was a lead singer doing the old-style jazz-type routines with 3 beautiful young girls in flowing blue dresses behind her as the backup singers doing choreography off on a kind of a side stage. During pretty much the whole time we were there, they were performing. It was really neat. I got a little bit of video from that, but I won't put that here. I do have some audio I'm going to put in just a little bit. But it was time to get on the Hogwarts Express, and my understanding was the Hogwarts Express was a way to go between the parks. So I figure they've got plenty of seating. They're going to put you on. They're going to pile everybody up there, go between the parks, and go back and just take people back and forth between the parks with maybe a little sort of performance there on the... I was told it was really neat and a neat experience, so I was sort of expecting some sort of Harry Potter experience when we went on there. But I didn't expect what we got, and I heard a couple of people that complained a little bit about it. You get in line, you wait in a long line, like a 30-minute line to get on the Hogwarts Express. And they pile you in there, 6 to 8 people per car, and they close you in just like in the movie. And on one side of the rail car, you've got a screen that as the thing starts moving, when you're stopped, it looks like a brick wall right in front of you, but as it starts moving, it looks like you're moving through London, going into the country area to Hogwarts. And you see all kinds of stuff from the movie, and it's kind of neat. And then also, between the interesting parts of that, on the other side, they've got a backlit thing where you hear Harry and Ron and Hermione talking, and you see shadows on the other side like they just on the outside of the car door. And that was kind of neat. And the Dementors came, but you never saw them. You saw the shadows, and Harry got rid of the Dementors, and it was a neat little experience, but I don't know, I want to say a little cheesy. I'm going to say it was a little cheesy, and I heard a couple of people who kind of said they were disappointed with that, because to me, I felt like it would have been better for a better experience to just put people on the train, the seating able to accommodate more, and maybe with some live action stuff, not necessarily a fight or anything like that, but with just, the people who were there working it, playing a character, and it's not a very long trip. It's just, maybe quarter of a mile at the most between the two parks, and so it doesn't take very long. The problem with the way they've got it set up is they can only put a few people in the cars at a time, and so you've got these long lines of people waiting to get between the parks. I would have just about, had my toe not been hurting so bad, I would have just about been better off walking through the rest of the park and going back through the other way, just to keep moving instead of standing in a line. The only thing I can say is that it probably was nice and cool in the areas where you stood. In the on-season, when it's so hot during the summer, it's probably a good rest for people who are looking for something in the shade to take a minute and just rest and not move very much. So on to Hogsmeade and Hogwarts. You got Hogwarts Castle. Got some great pictures of Hogwarts Castle, and you've also got the little town of Hogsmeade, which in the movies is quite a ways off from Hogwarts. That's kind of a field trip that they'll take, but they put everything together right here in this little area of the Harry Potter part of the Islands of Adventure, and that's where Hogsmeade and Hogwarts Castle is. And you got a couple of other things there. You've got an attraction with Hagrid's house. Hagrid is kind of the groundskeeper and the guy who teaches them about magical creatures in the book and in the movies. And there's a ride. You go into the ride, you see his house up in there and a hippogriff sitting on the little animatronic hippogriff. But for the most part, it's all about Hogsmeade and Hogwarts. Now, when we got to this one, I liked it, I think, a little bit better than I liked Diagon Alley. Now, Diagon Alley did have the area. I was about to breeze over this, but Diagon Alley has the area where everybody goes and gets their supplies and the school supplies, their wands, their owls, and all that stuff. But they've also got the dark area for the dark wizards. They did have a little area like that. If you went into one corner and went around the edge, you could go down into that area. That was a little unnerving to me because although I don't have a problem with Harry Potter as a whole, I don't like the occult type stuff, and there's not much of that. And in the books and in the movies, all of the real dark occult type stuff is attributed to the evil guys, the bad guys. And so, I mean, it's not celebrated or anything like that, but at the same time, they did have that part of the park, and we did go down in there, and we didn't stay long. It just, I didn't feel really good in the little store where they had all of that type of stuff. I mean, they didn't have pentagrams and things like that. It was still all... Use the right lane to take exit 196 AB for Bobby Jones Expressway. Got a turn here in a couple of miles. So I wasn't really crazy about that area, but we didn't stay in there very long. So we moved on to Hogsmeade, and that was my favorite part of it. The rooftops were covered in snow or decorated like they were, and it gave you that feeling of winter, and that's in the books and movies, it's winter and snowy when they go there. It was really neat. It almost felt like an old-timey Victorian Christmas village type thing with this huge castle. I also had a couple of rides, aside from the little kind of easier roller coaster for Hagrid. It had the Dragon Challenge roller coaster, which is a big, one of those nasty roller coasters. And Kayla saw it and said, I think I want to do that. Now, my wife, she doesn't do well with motion, and especially roller coasters. One time at Six Flags, we rode the Batman ride, and when we got off, she was so sick she had to lay down in the gift shop, like in the floor of the gift shop. She was so sick. Keep left to continue on I-520 East. And that same thing happened here, but I'm jumping ahead. She wanted to get on that roller coaster, and I said, I don't think you want to. I said, you're going to get sick. She said, I think I'll be okay. I want to try it. I really want to. Because Kayla she doesn't like to be beat. You know, she likes to win. And she said, you know what? I'm going to get on this roller coaster. So I was not going to make her do that one by herself, especially knowing she might not feel well getting off of it. So Noah was going to have to go, and here he goes starting to whine, and I took him up to make sure he was tall enough, and he was plenty tall enough. He was probably 4 or 5 inches above the line, and I told him, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you ride this roller coaster. He did not want to. Please, I don't want to ride it. I said, Noah, you're going to ride it this time. If you don't like it, or it makes you sick, or whatever, I won't make you ride anything else, especially a roller coaster type thing. I won't make you do it. But you have got to know whether you like this stuff or not, because you don't want to grow up being afraid to do this stuff because you never tried it. I said, you're going to try it once. I'm going to man up or make you man up and do it. And if you don't like it, it'll be the last time. Okay, well, he whined and cried he didn't cry, but he was really nervous and my son is dramatic just like we are, and he's making a little bit of a scene. We want to make sure people could see him. He wrote it and absolutely loved it. I mean, all the way getting into the seats, he was nervous. At the end of it, he was so proud of himself, for one thing, for having done it. And then he realized how much he loved it. And from that time on, he was a roller coaster monster. We had to ride it again later. And I have to recuperate. I don't get sick on roller coasters, but I can't, the older I get on and then get right back on it again. I need 30 minutes to recuperate before I get back on, because there's a little bit of nausea that goes along with roller coasters with me. Kayla, on the other hand, should not have ridden that ride. She got sick as a dog. She got off and said, I got to find a place to sit down. So we found her place in the cool, in the shade, to sit down, got her something to drink. Noah wanted to ride the Hagrid roller coaster, so he and I waited in that line. She said, y'all go do that. I'm going to sit right here. We did that, and when we got back, she said, we got to go back to the hotel. Now, it was already almost 5 o'clock, and the park was closing at 5 anyway to get ready for the Halloween nights, 25 years of Halloween night. They had this Halloween Horror Nights thing during October that goes on in the park after hours, and you have to buy a separate ticket for it, and the park closes a little bit earlier during the day. So that was fine. It was getting time for the park to close anyway by the time we had done everything. So we left. We got back to the room 6-something, and I can't remember what we did. I don't know if we ate. I don't think we ate that afternoon. I don't remember if we even ate that afternoon. Kayla certainly didn't feel like eating anything. We just went to the room and went to bed. And by 6:30 or 7, we were all asleep. Now remember, I had driven 6 hours, then another 8 hours, or ridden, and then did the entire park, or the entire day at a park. We were about as worn out as I have ever been. We slept the entire time. I was worried I was going to go into bed that early. I was afraid I was going to wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep. And I did wake up in the middle of the night and stayed awake for about 15 minutes before I decided just to make myself lay back down and try to go to sleep. And when I did, I went right back to sleep and slept until time to get up. So that was the first day. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the second day because most of it was about Harry Potter. We went back to Hogwarts because he wanted to ride the Hogwarts ride. There's a big ride in the castle. That's the one that made me sick. Within 5 seconds of the ride starting, I had to close my eyes and lean my head back against the headrest and just hum the Harry Potter theme to keep my stomach settled, because that ride simulates riding on a broomstick, and the seats move around and throw you backward and sideways and whatever and spin you around all at the same time. This huge screen that you can only see the screen in front of you is going on, and you've got surround sound around you in the seats where it completely submerges you into this experience like you're riding on a broomstick. And I couldn't handle it. I just got sick and had to close my eyes and just hope for the ride to be over. Luckily, because I did that and didn't endure it, I didn't get so sick that I couldn't recuperate, but there was no way I was going back. Kayla and Noah did fine and loved it, and Noah wanted to ride it again later that day, and I waited. I said, I'm not riding it again because I will get sick. And it turns out Kayla did have to do what I did the second time. She had to close her eyes and lean back the second time, and she didn't understand why it didn't affect her the first time, but did the second time. But they rode it again, and Kayla got sick that time while I waited outside in Hogsmeade. Now, I said earlier that Honeyduke's was in Diagon Alley. I was wrong. Honeyduke's candy shop is in Hogsmeade, and I'm about to play you some audio of me standing outside while they were waiting on that ride. I was standing outside of Honeyduke's, and here's the audio. I recorded a little bit of that. Here's that audio now. We decided to come to Universal Studios mainly for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter as a surprise birthday present for my son, who had been begging to come here. But we've done the whole Universal Studios thing, but we spent a whole lot of time here in the world of Harry Potter, and it's really cool. If you like this type of thing, it really is, and especially if you're a Harry Potter fan, it really is a good experience. Except for all the people. We were hoping that coming in the middle of October that there wouldn't be quite as many people, and I don't think there are quite as many people as normally, but it is still very crowded. In fact, I'm sitting here recording this with my back leaned up against a brick wall of Honeyduke's candy shop. And if you're a Harry Potter fan, you know that Honeyduke's is the place that they all go when they go into Hogsmeade. I'm sitting actually in the middle of the square of Hogsmeade, and it looks really cool. They've got it decorated like the winter time, like in the movies, with the snow on the roofs and everything else, and this looks really cool. I was about to go into Honeyduke's while Kayla and Noah ride the Harry Potter ride again, because I just got sick on the Harry Potter ride. There's several rides themed from the books, but the one that's actually in Hogwarts Castle made me completely sick. I can't do the stuff where there's the floating or the flying simulation, and in that you're flying through the castle and through a Quidditch tournament, I guess, because I kept my eyes closed the entire time. Once we started, I said, no, I'm not going to be able to handle this. And so they can do it again. Noah was dying to do it again, and so I said, you go ahead and do it. Kayla took 2 ginger root caplets to help her, hopefully, with the nausea, and she went with him again. So I've got about 45 minutes while they wait to ride that ride and get through it, and I'm just kind of poking around Hogsmeade, and it's really nice. And like I said, I was going to go into Honeyduke's, but it was so crowded when I walked in there. Everybody must have already had their lunch and are trying to find something sweet now, because there's no way I'm going in there. It's packed in there like a can of sardines. But, that's what you expect when you come to these places. If you don't like crowds, you might want to come in the dead of winter between January and February. We've heard that these theme parks, that's the best time to come as far as crowds and getting good discounts and stuff. But I think any time of the year, you better expect a large crowd. And I think the worst part of it is the people who have a hard time walking. They have the rental scooters, and you'll be walking along just bebopping and getting from place A to place B, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's somebody in a scooter in front of you, and you have to watch out that you don't run all over them. They don't run all over you. But other than that, if you can handle the stop-and-go traffic, I think you'll do okay. The lines are kind of long, but they're not too awful bad. If you're expecting to wait in lines, they're not as bad as you probably would expect, especially in like June, July, and August. So we're having fun, and that's really all I got to say about that at this point. Now, also, while I was waiting on them in that ride, there was a group of singers on this side of the Harry Potter world at Island of Adventure, and it was a beautiful young girl I loved her English accent. I don't know if she was really English or not. If she wasn't, then she really had a spot-on accent, but it was something about the timbre of her voice, or timbre, whatever the word is, of her voice and the way she spoke that really was nice. And that's why she was the MC of the singing group, but there were 4 young people, 2 guys and 2 girls, that were doing a cappella singing, choral singing. And they represented each of the houses of Hogwarts: Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Slytherin, and Ravenclaw. And they were dressed in the robes and everything else, and they started singing, and I recorded a little bit of that audio here. It's what you heard at the beginning of the podcast, and here's just a little bit more of that audio. They were very good. So that's what I got to enjoy while I was waiting on them in Hogwarts. The rest of the time, it was pretty much just doing the touristy things. Go in the shops. We ate at Diagon Alley the day before. We ate at one of the little restaurants they have there, and it was $50 for not nearly enough food, and they didn't have anything to drink hardly except specialty stuff from the movie. Like, we all got butterbeer because we wanted to try that, and the cold butterbeer was awful. We were told to try the hot butterbeer because it was more like almost like a hot chocolate type drink, and when we tasted it, Kayla got one the second day, and it tasted like hot butterscotch. It was delicious. I'm not crazy about butterscotch, but I liked this. It was hot, and when you compared it to the cold butterbeer, 180,000% better. So we did the other stuff too, though. I'm not going to go a whole lot into that because there just really wasn't a lot to say. I do have some more audio I want to play, and this next one is something that we took in the Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park was kind of neat. It had a big area where you could go in, and the kids kind of had a restaurant up top, and then down below had a discovery zone with some dinosaur skeletons kind of in the middle. Kind of looked like the little place in the movie. I think that's what it was designed after, is the big receiving area in the movie where all the tourists are, and they've got the dinosaur skeletons. It kind of was reminiscent of that, and we recorded this audio here. Now I'm sitting here with Kayla, my wife, and we are in the Jurassic Park dinosaur thingy exhibit thingy. Now, I talked to Noah earlier today, right at the beginning of the second day, and all I got from him was, yeah, it's cool, okay, good. From a mom's perspective, how has the last day and a half been?
I'm tired, but it's been fun. I like this park better than the one we went to yesterday. We just went to straight Universal Studios yesterday, and we're in Islands of Adventure today. And this park, quite honestly, is...
it's more creative.
Yeah.
It's more artistic.
It really is. And as a result, I've had a lot more fun.
Well, it's Islands of Adventure, and I think that's why they're split up that way, because the other one's kind of like taking you to a different area, like old New York and stuff, and it's more realistic, but this is more like the fantasy side of stuff.
Right.
Except the Harry Potter stuff.
Well, yeah, and there's the Marvel area, too, which is a whole area that is dedicated to Marvel superheroes.
Yeah.
And so we got to see Spider-Man, and we got to see Cap, and a couple of X-Men, and a couple of villains.
And I was like you. I wanted to get my picture taken with Dr. Doom because I wanted to have Selfie of Doom. I wanted to be able to put Selfie of Doom on
that
Facebook,
awesome.
But I went on to the restroom and he was by himself. When I came back, there was a line of people.
Of course. Well, and that's why I ended up not getting my picture made with Cap, because my phone is dying for one thing, and I don't have a camera other than my phone. And then by the time we got turned around, I saw how long the line was, and I decided that, no, thank you though. We are going back to Hogsmeade in just a little while. We're going to do, Noah wants to do the wizard, the
Hogwarts Castle ride.
The Hogwarts Castle thingy, which made Michael sick. Not as deathly ill as I got on the Dragon Challenge yesterday.
And that's odd because I can ride crazy killer roller coasters with no problem, just a little bit of nausea. But you put me inside something where I can't see around me and I'm floating around like I'm flying, I had to close my eyes the entire time.
I'm hoping I don't have to again. Is it okay that that's locked?
Yeah, it's still recording.
Okay, just making sure. I hope that I don't have to, I hope I don't become so deathly ill this time, but it didn't bother me as much as the thing did yesterday.
And so you took 2 ginger caplets.
So I should be okay, you'd think.
Hopefully. We'll see.
We shall see.
We're old.
If I have to lay down in the little gift shop later.
Wait, no.
Then if I have the experiences of parents at Universal Studios.
So we're going to stop this clip because my arm just got stretched out really hard. Dad. So I'm going to go. And the rest of the day was just let's kind of finish up what we can do and try to hit the things maybe that we missed and then go double back and do the things we want to do again. Noah wanted to ride Gringotts Bank one more time. Kayla set that one out because she had had enough of moving stuff. She really liked that one, but she just had enough of moving rides. She couldn't handle it anymore, so she just stood back and waited and sat around Diagon Alley while we got on the Gringotts ride, which this time, the second day, there were more people. There were quite a bit more people on the second day. on Thursday than there were on Wednesday, and I don't really know why, except that maybe other people had fall breaks on Thursday and Friday, whereas ours started on Wednesday, so maybe there were more people there because of that. But we waited forever to do that and did that one more time, and it was great, and then we worked our way back. There was a lot of great stuff, but we just didn't get a chance to get to it all. I mean, we missed the Minion adventure. We would have liked to have seen the Blue Man Group, but it was like $60 a ticket extra, so we decided not to do that. We didn't ride the Transformers ride. We didn't ride the Spider-Man ride. We tried to ride the Spider-Man ride, but at the moment that we wanted to ride it, they were saying they were having technical difficulties and to come back later. We never made it back. I will say that the Marvel area of Universal Studios was very neat. They had a Dr. Seuss area, which we didn't do anything with. That was more for smaller kids, I think. And we just kind of walked through there on our way to Hogwarts on day 2. But that looked very neat, and we were thinking that next time we come, we may spend a day at Universal to make up for the stuff that we didn't get a chance to do on this trip, and bring my daughter, and she will love the Dr. Seuss stuff, I think, because she'll be at that time about 3.5 years old. So that was our trip. Again, the parks closed around 5, and we were ready. So we went and waited. Our bus arrived at 6. By the time we got out of the park, we ate. City Walk doesn't close at 5. You can get out of the parks and then go to City Walk and spend some time there. So when the park closed, we went and found a Mexican restaurant and ate the biggest plate of nachos that you've ever seen in your life. It was delicious, and the waiter took real good care of us, and I took real good care of him with the tip because of that. We walked onto our bus and got back to the hotel and went to bed. Got up the next morning, slept in a little bit the next morning, then got up, checked out.
In a quarter mile, keep left to continue on US 278 East.
I'll tell you what, I am not ever recording a podcast while having to listen to the GPS again. I know you can turn the voice off, but I really kind of, while I'm doing this, if I'm going to be doing this while I'm driving, I need her to talk to me so I don't have to keep looking down at it. But this will be the last time I do that. She's driving me crazy, and I've edited out a bunch of it that you haven't heard.
Keep left to continue on US 278 East.
I'm going to throw my phone out the window. Anyway, Noah had been given at his birthday a Disney gift card, so we had to find a gift store, a Disney gift store, on the way back, and that was an ordeal. It took forever to find. I would have thought there'd be a Disney gift store on every corner, and there were a couple that were gift stores, but I didn't think they would probably take the card. They looked like kind of knockoff brand stores. We wanted to go to an actual Disney store, and we found one, and we drove across Orlando into the Magic Kingdom area, the Disney area of Orlando, to try to go to the really big, it's supposed to be the biggest Disney store in Orlando, but the road construction was such you couldn't even get to it. So we abandoned that, and Kayla looked and found another one several miles down the road at a mall. Took us forever to get parked there. We finally got into that store, which was elbow to elbow, and then finally got out. By that time, Michael was a bit ill. Michael was not doing well mentally with the crowds, with my ingrown toenail, and being tired, and having an 8-hour drive ahead of us on top of having spent half the morning trying to find a Disney store. Now, we did eat at an IHOP, and I'm going to complain about that because they got our order completely wrong. But at the same time, they had a line of people out the door and were trying to get people moved. So I didn't complain to them. I guess they did the best they could with what they had, trying to get people in and out. It would have been really easy to not get every detail on the orders right. So I guess I shouldn't complain about that. The trip on the way home was as you would expect. Everybody was tired. Everybody was much more quiet. Noah had his headphones in. I had mine in, listening to podcasts. Kayla drove, listening to her music, and we talked a little, but not nearly as much as we did on the way up there. If you've ever seen the Norman Rockwell painting that shows two depictions of a family vacation, they're all piled into a van, I think. You've got everybody excited on the way back, or on the way up there, except the grandma who's just sitting there all prim and proper with this stone look on her face. And then on the way back, everybody's tired and beat and just looks like the Walking Dead, except Grandma, who's still in the exact same pose with the exact same look on her face. That's how we felt. and it was just a tiring day. We slept very late the next morning, which was Saturday after we got home, and we got home around midnight, and we rested. We fed the animals. They had been fed quite a lot of food on the way, or as we left, so that they'd be able to be handled, but they were ready for fresh water and fresh food by the time we got there. So we did that, got our showers and our baths, and got into bed, and then slept until we felt like waking up the next Saturday morning. So if you're going to take your family to Universal Studios, I do recommend it. I am going to say I'm not as much a fan of that as I am of Disney. It's not that they don't do a good job with what they have, it's just a different experience. Disney has a little bit of a different philosophy on customer service and customer relations, on putting you actually into the world of fantasy that you went for and paid for. Universal is a little more on the real life side of things, and that means you don't necessarily get as much of the characterization as you do with Disney. It doesn't completely submerge you into the world like Disney does. But they did a good job, and I did not feel like I wasted my money. Actually, the prices on some things were very high, but the prices on some other things were not very high. I was able to buy a prop for a show that we're doing at the theater in Elberton. I found that was a perfect prop, and I sent a picture of that to the director and asked him would he like me to buy it while I was there, and he said yes. And the price on it was really not all that out of line, a little more than you'd want to pay in a normal store, but not too bad. So just expect to take some money. I highly recommend doing a package instead of just going and buying the individual tickets. If you'll do a package that includes the hotel and as many accommodations according to what you can afford by the price of the packages, it's just helpful to do that. It's nice to know once it's paid that my park pass is paid, my hotels are paid. It's nice to, once that's done, know that a few months down the road, especially if you do it ahead of time like we did, that you can go in and not have that much to worry about except you're spending money on your travel and you're in the park. And then some packages actually cover that too. A Disney package we got the last time we went to Disney covered one meal a day in the park and several snacks in the park, as well as our hotel and our park passes. So there's a lot of plans and things that you can get in the parks in Orlando. You just need to do a little research with the internet. It makes it easy, and I highly suggest doing that because it just makes things a lot easier on you. We had a great time. It was something I'd like to do again. We've already got plans to start saving money to do the Disney trip, and we're going to go, I think, back to Orlando for one day during that trip. Not to Orlando, but to Universal Studios to pick up on things we missed. And other than that, that's the podcast. I do have a couple of things that I want to mention to you before we close out the podcast, and that's ways you can get in touch with me. I really do covet you getting in touch with me, especially with this podcast. With my other one, C1G, that's Q1 Go, the theater show, I have Tony, and she and I banter back and forth, and with the podcast, you just don't get a whole lot of feedback, especially when you're fairly new. With this one, because I'm being so personal and talking so directly to you, the listener, I want to have a relationship with you. I want to at least know where you're listening from. So if you're listening from, I'm in the southeast area of the United States in Georgia, or at this point, I'm in South Carolina. I'm traveling all over the southeast as I record this podcast. I want to know where you're hearing me from. Are you listening to me from Washington State, from California, from New York? I want to hear. Have you picked it up in Australia? Q1 Go has a listener in Australia, at least one that I know of. And so I think that's really neat, and I want to know who you are. I want to know who I'm talking to. I want to create a community at least somehow. And here's the way you can do that. You can do that by going straight to the website and contacting me. I have a website. I've been working on it this weekend. It's still got a lot of work as I record this to be done. Hopefully by the time this is released, most of it will be up and going. But the show can be streamed straight from the podcast, straight from the website. It can be streamed there. I have a contact page, and that's how you can contact me via the website. And let me know you visited. Let me know what you think about it. If you don't want to go to the website or you just would like to give me a phone call, I have a voicemail hotline. Just make sure when you call it that you reference the Road Noise podcast, since the hotline does cover all of my podcasts. It's the same number for all of them. And that number is 706-398-0401. That's 706-398-0401. Or you can email me at roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. Now, I just mentioned going to the website, and I realized that I did not give you the actual website address, did I? That's okay. I'm going to give it to you now. If you want to go to the website, it's www.roadnoisepodcast.com. So roadnoisepodcast.com is the website, and roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com is how you can get in touch with me via email. So that's the show. That's Road Noise episode number 4, my family trip to Universal Orlando with a focus on the Harry Potter attraction. I had a great time. I hope you enjoyed listening to my rundown and recap of it. If you did, let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you next time. Thanks for riding along beside me in the passenger seat as we learn to live life 1 mile at a time. All right, we're riding the Green Gots ride for the second time. You gonna talk a little bit more?
No.
No? Oh, come on.
No.
You're the one that made me get on this ride the second time.
Well,
We're almost at the end of our Universal journey. Do you have anything to say or anything to describe?
can we stay tomorrow?
We don't have that kind of money, buddy.
Can we go to Disney World?
We're gonna do that next year, hopefully.
Can we go somewhere tomorrow that before we leave?
So we're gonna go somewhere tomorrow before we leave, but I'm not sure exactly where we're gonna go.
Okay, good.
We're waiting in line. We're going through the line for the Green Gots Escape from Green Gots ride. So it's kind of a roller coaster, but kind of a half roller coaster, half movie. I can do this one without getting sick.
Yeah. He couldn't ride Hogwarts.
They know that. We've already talked about that extensively.
When?
Me and your mom recorded a couple of clips.
And yeah, there's a lot of cool Harry Potter stuff here. So, we're about to get on the ride. We still have to go through the elevator.
Oh, that's right. We gotta get on.
We have to go through that clip, go through the elevator, and then go through the goggle line, which I'm not going to put on the goggles, and then get on the ride, and we're going to cut you off. Bye-bye.